I just filmed an entire introduction and forgot to turn my microphone on, so round two. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome back to my channel. So this week is going to be the first of 3 Meet My Pet videos. If you watched my video from a couple weeks ago, you know that I got 3 new pets over the last few months. And so these next 3 Sunday videos are going to be just introducing you to them and showing their setups and all of that good stuff. I was actually going to start with the crocodile skink, but her tank is currently growing out and I'm letting everything root in place. So we're going to start with Winter, my new baby leopard gecko. I know that he's some form of albino Max Snow, and I'm pretty sure that he's a Trimper Max Snow, but I'm not 100% sure on what his morph is because I did not get him from a breeder. Really quick backtrack for those of you who didn't see my All My Pets video. Winter actually came from Craigslist. I got him from someone who was not taking the best care of him. I do not frequent the animal ads on Craigslist unless I am looking for a specific animal for this very reason, because if I see an animal that's not in good conditions, I'm going to go and get it. So I try my best not to go into the animal section. So I was actually looking for tanks for my snakes and I stumbled upon this little baby leopard gecko. The ad said that he absolutely hated this person and he would scream, and basically she just wanted to get rid of him, and the picture was of him surrounded by a bunch of dead mealworms, and I wasn't pleased. So I texted this lady back and forth for a little bit, and I found out that he came from PetSmart. She had had him for about 6 months and he had absolutely no color and he was still tiny. And I even went back and looked at pictures of Percy when she was that old, and she was so much bigger than he was. And she said that he wasn't eating and he wasn't growing like her other 2 leopard geckos, and she just wanted to get rid of him. And so I went and picked him up, and when I went to pick him up, she informed me that she used to have 3 leopard geckos and her cat ate the other 2. She also informed me that she did not have a heating pad. She was using a red light bulb for him. Needless to say, I was very happy to go and pick him up and get him all set up here. I did start him off in a 10-gallon tank because he was so tiny and he was absolutely terrified when I brought him home. He literally would scream and pee everywhere if my hand was even in the tank, and then that behavior became very defensive behavior. If my hand went into that tank, he would bark and do the little predator waggy tail thing that leopard geckos do, and he would bite me. And after a few weeks of working with him, over a month now of working with him, he has gotten so much better, and I can reach in, I can hand feed him, and I can touch him, I can pet him. He has come so far already. He has shed multiple times. He is turning yellow. He isn't that pale color anymore, and he has grown so much. So I just wanted to give him a brand new 20-gallon long tank since he has grown so much and he's doing so much better. So this is me setting that tank up for him. So first thing, I wanted to build him a hide. I had so much fun building the hides and little floating island in Zaz's tank, and I wanted to do that again. Plus, if you saw in that video, I made a comment about using those extra floating islands for a future project, and this is that project. So first, we are building him a hide. We are drawing it on foam here. And this time, instead of a coping saw and a box cutter, we are using this foam cutter. This made everything so much faster and easier. I was so happy with this thing. I had been wanting one for a long time. My husband got it for me for Mother's Day, and I can't put into words how much easier this made making this hide. But basically the goal here is to just put layers on top of each other so that it makes a little hiding spot on the inside. I'm not putting a back on mine because mine is going to sit up against the background that we're going to make here in a few minutes. But the goal is just to cut out those layers and hot glue them, and then we're going to grout all of it in the end. And everything was kind of measured out in the beginning before we started cutting this out, but we're just going to go ahead and make sure that we like the way this is looking in the tank. And this is the basic shape of the hide at the end. I carved a door out with one of the foam cutting tools and just rounded those corners out, and I made it 5 layers of foam thick. I actually liked how it looked better with 4 layers, but with some of the decorations we're going to be putting in here, I went ahead and put a 5th layer. Next up was the Grout, and I didn't film me doing any of this because I did it all outside and it has been 1,000 degrees outside lately. As for the first layer, I like to put a thick flat coat, and then I like to just go back after it dries with the second layer and just kind of cake it on to make it look more rocky. The exact grout that I used and everything I used in this video will all be linked in the description. And then after all that dries, we're going to paint it. I am using the same sorts of colors that I used in Zaz's tank just because, like I said before, I had those pieces left and I didn't want them to go to waste, so we're going to use it in this tank as well. So basically we're just mixing a bunch of oranges and light browns and dark yellows to make this look more like a sandy rock. But if you notice, I have paint all over the plate, and that's because I'm wiping off a majority of the paint before I put it on the rock. So I'm not just putting a thick layer of paint on the rock, and when you take most of the paint off of your brush, what that does is it allows the folds in the rock to catch some of the paint, and it'll give it more texture and make it look more rocky. And then I just went back with some even lighter yellow and kind of just touched some highlight points. And that just gives it even more dimension. And that's it for that. Next we move on to the background. So I measured everything out before, and I'm just taking my foam cutter and cutting out the size of the background first. And once we make sure that all fits correctly, we're going to start using the engraving tool that came with the foam cutter and making some cracks and crevices in this background. I went ahead and drew out everything first because I didn't want to mess anything up, but I just used that engraving tool, which was super awesome. It just melts away the styrofoam and it leaves you with texture in your background. Next, I'm putting on a layer of grout. This is the kind of grout that you have to mix yourself, so I mixed it very thin so that it would go on thin. The only reason that I'm using this is because styrofoam has that like eggshell texture, and I didn't want that showing through my background, so I'm just putting a very thin layer of this on there to smooth everything out. And then I'm just taking this little spongy brush to go back through the cracks to get some of the grout out of there. I'm sure there was a much better and easier and faster way to do this, but this is how I did it. Next up, we gotta paint this background. So again, just using those browns and yellows. I made this way darker than I actually wanted it. I wanted it to blend in more with the hide, and in the end I just kind of kept it the way it was because I didn't want to do it over again. But it ended up looking a lot like that special edition Exoterra tank with the cave paintings. I also ended up putting 2 layers of shellac over all this just to seal everything in. Next up is the tank flooring. Again, I'm just using leftover tiles from Zaz's tank, and we are using a wet tile cutter to cut the tiles. If you're getting tiles from somewhere like Lowe's or Home Depot, you can just take them the measurements and they can cut this for you, but we just happen to have a tile cutter. So back inside my house, we are working on the background. I am siliconing these floating islands to the background, but I'm using these little peg sticks from the Dollar Tree to push them into the islands and then into the background just as another means of securing them. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to use some aquarium safe silicone and silicone it in place. And once I have all the dowels where I want them, I'm actually going to put a little bit of black paint on the tip of each one, so that way I can line it up on the background to make sure everything is straight, and I can just kind of gently press it so there's dots on there where I know where it needs to go, and then I can take just like a chopstick and start little holes, so that way I'm not shoving it into the background lopsided. As always, I'm using aquarium safe silicone, and I'm just sealing all around that and pressing them into place. But this one wouldn't sit straight, so I just stuck a weight on top of it until it dried. So if you're going to do this, just be sure that the backs of these are completely straight, because mine were not. And then since we made this background really top heavy, we're just going to go ahead and silicone it to the actual tank so nothing topples over. And if you notice, I did not silicone the hide itself to the back because I want to be able to lift that up and take it out if I need to get to my gecko. Then we're going to put the rest of it together. As always, I put a little bit of sand underneath my tile where the heat pad's going to go, because tile does have those spaces underneath it, and I want the tile to conduct as much heat as possible. So we're just filling those gaps so air doesn't get between the tile and the heat pad. So no need to worry, the gecko will never ever come in contact with that sand. Now I'm just adding all of the things. My other leopard gecko, Percy, absolutely loves her cork bark and her little moss rock hide, so I felt like Winter should have those things too. And as with every tank I've ever done, I always forget to hook up the heat pad and the thermostat until the very end. So this is me hooking that up. ZoomEd heat pads don't tend to stick the best, so I always go over the sides with tape. Make sure to put the little feet that come with the heat pad onto the tank so that air can circulate underneath it. And definitely make sure 100% of the time, if you're using a heat pad, that you have it hooked up to a thermostat. Without that thermostat, the temperature of the heat pad cannot regulate and it will overheat and it could possibly injure your animal. And in that rock hide, I'm putting damp forest moss. Leopard geckos need a moist hide in order to shed properly, especially to get all of the shed off of those tiny little toes. And other than his little calcium dish that I forgot to put in this video, we are all done. That is how Winter's tank ended up. I also put a small UVB light on both of my leopard geckos tanks. I feel like it just makes them more active, so I use it. And then I have this really cool locking lid that goes on top of the tank as well that I got quite a while ago. And even though he initially just kind of ran and hid, after he calmed down a little bit, he spent hours just climbing everything and exploring and checking out all of his hides and just enjoying his tank. And that's it, guys. He loves his new tank and that makes me so happy. I am going to try my best to stay off the animal parts of Craigslist. Is it just here? Like, I feel like every time I go on Craigslist, like I said, I always find absolutely terribly kept animals and I just want to run and save them. When you guys go on Craigslist, is it that sad too, or is that just where I'm at? I'm legitimately curious and I'm actually trying to stay away from there so that I don't have an entire animal rescue in my house in the next few months. That is it. If you're not already, don't forget to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and Wednesday. Thank you so much to Tortoise is Great, Mila Grow, 5726, sorry if I said that wrong, and All Reptile 6 for following me on Instagram, going through and like a whole bunch of my pictures. You guys are the bee's knees. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Albino Max Snow, and I know that he's some